secure, safe, and timely delivery of the nation's election mail ahead of the November 2024 general election. Again, today's webinar is being recorded. Today's speakers are Postmaster General Louis DeJoy and the Postal Service election mail leadership, including Chief Customer and Marketing Officer Steve Monteith, Director of Election and Government Mail Services Adrian Marshall, and Brendan Donahue, Assistant Postal Inspector in charge with the United States Postal Inspection Service. The speakers will take questions from the news media at the end of a few minutes with our Postmaster General. He'll be staying throughout. And if you'd like to submit a question, please submit those questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We encourage you to submit questions throughout the presentation, and we'll address them at the end of the webinar. If you have follow-up questions after the presentation, you can contact me directly. My contact information will be on the last slide. And now, Postmaster General DeJoy. Sir?
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. As you know, for a variety of reasons, there is a heightened sensitivity and scrutiny across the entire vote-by-mail ecosystem. We recognize that election officials are under an extreme amount of pressure and will remain so for at least the next 2 months. We also recognize that the American public will become increasingly alarmed if there is ongoing dialogue that continues to question the reliability of the Postal Service for the upcoming elections. That is why we are here today and will communicate with you frequently as we move forward towards Election Day. Let me be clear. The Postal Service is ready to deliver the nation's mail-in ballots. The primary elections are now complete. In July, the OIG released an assessment of our performance in the primaries. As the OIG reported, for the period from December 1st, 2023 to April 30th, 2024, the Postal Service processed political and election mail with on-time processing scores ranging from 97.01 to 98.17%. The OIG made recommendations that align with our ongoing efforts in pursuit of operational excellence in all areas of our service. Further train your 640,000 people and monitor compliance and performance across our 31,000 facilities. We are doing that. In a highly sensationalized environment and during a global pandemic, we were successful in 2020 delivering an historic volume of mail-in ballots. In the 2020 general election, we delivered 99.89% of ballots from voters to election officials within 7 days. We will be even better prepared for 2024 and will perform admirably again, as we always have. Our track record is strong. We have been transporting and delivering ballots since 1864. Our network is designed to handle a surge in mail volume, just like we do every election and holiday season. In 2020, at their historically high, ballots accounted for just 0.11% of the Postal Service's total mail volume. Our failure rate is measured in fractions of a percentage point. If our recommendations are followed, and each year we deploy extraordinary measures enabling our 640,000 dedicated people to mine for these fractions. You can count on them to deliver exceptional results this election, as we have in the past. Moving the nation's election mail over the next 47 days is an all-hands-on-deck effort for the Postal Service. We routinely monitor performance in all our facilities, and we implement certain processes and procedures specific to election mail all year round. This includes advancing election mail ahead of other mail in our processing operations and using daily all clears to ensure that all election mail is accounted for in the system, and that mail scheduled or committed to go out is processed accordingly. Starting October 21st, we will once again deploy extraordinary measures across our national network. These measures include, in retail operations, post offices may establish dedicated line for ballot postmarks and drive-through ballot drop operations. These will be staffed throughout Election Day. Our delivery and transportation operations will make additional deliveries and collections to ensure timely delivery of ballots. Early collections will be run on November 4th, with special delivery runs to boards of elections on November 4th and Election Day, and longer for those states that accept ballot mail after Election Day. Our postmasters will arrange after-hours special pickups and handoffs with boards of elections and utilize the express mail network for completed ballots entered close to Election Day. We have a process to redirect misprinted ballots. Carriers will check every residential mailbox for outgoing mail starting October 31st. Processing facilities will process ballots on Sunday, November 3rd, Monday, November 4th, and Tuesday, November 5th. Ballots we identify for non-local destinations will be expedited using Priority Mail Express if needed. One point about extraordinary measures I want you to understand is that these are designed to rescue ballots that are entered in our system, likely or definitely too late to make election deadlines set by election officials. And they, by definition, are a deviation from normal mail flow and processing, meaning they are not run through our plants and processing machines as mail normally would. As such, they often go out of measurement and miss destinating scans or postmarking. We engage in heroic efforts intended to beat the clock. These efforts are designed to be used only when the risk of deviating from our standard processes is necessary to compensate for the ballot being mailed so close to a state's deadline. This is commonly misunderstood in the media and even by election officials. One other point here, we are a national service, and to operate successfully and even legally, we must have consistent policies nationwide. But there are 8,000 election jurisdictions and 50 states who are far from uniform in their election laws and practices. We are and must be the uniform element in a sea of variation. We don't control when ballots are mailed by election officials or when they must be returned. But we do want to do our best to ensure that our system is effective for voters who choose to utilize us to cast their ballot. For that reason, we encourage the voting public to mail early if they choose to vote by mail, and to put their returned ballot back in the mail at least 7 days before it must be back to their election official under the laws of the state where they are voting. That's the key to everyone's success, and we could use your help in communicating that. We have had and will continue to have ongoing communications with our stakeholders across the mail-in voting ecosystem. Internally, we are working round the clock from our local teams in the field to headquarters to address and resolve issues as they might appear. As part of our joint task force with union leaders and management associations, we will deploy ballot monitors and ambassadors throughout our operations beginning October 1st to reinforce and amplify our policies and procedures on the ground. We have an exceptional leadership team overseeing our operations and dedicated employees who are fully committed to our success in delivering the nation's election mail. I am personally engaged, establishing meetings 2 times a week with our regional field team representing all 50 states and territories. They are keeping me closely informed. The United States Postal Inspection Service is fully committed to protecting the security and integrity of the nation's election mail. This includes rigorous security protocols, continuous monitoring, and prompt response to any potential threats or incidents. Any person that attempts to tamper with the nation's election mail will be met with swift consequences. Now I would like to open it up for your questions.
All right, Postmaster General, we have a couple of questions. And as you turn in your questions, if you could just do me a kind favor and tell me your name and affiliation. That'll help us make sure we keep track of these things a little better. We have Alex from the New York Times who is asking about ballot numbers. Is there any way to know how many ballots are currently in the mail for each state? If so, how much information is available for each state? Postmaster General.
So I'm going to kick that over to Adrian and Steve. We have very, very detailed tracking upon entry of if people use the IMB codes and so forth. If there's not a specific tracking that that identifies it, we have other methodologies of collecting that information, which I'd like Adrian or Steve to identify for you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the question. So we don't currently have the volume by states. What we do know is that at least 45 days prior to the election, they're required to mail UOCAVA ballots. And those ballots will start to hit our mail stream on September 21st. When we can determine that the ballots that are entered through the mail stream are properly prepared, we track that volume through our system, but no, we don't currently have the volume by state. Thanks for asking.
All right, another question. This one is from Mark from the New York Post. You recently reversed a decision to move outgoing mail from processing from Reno, Nevada to Sacramento, California, in part because of concerns about election mail. What else is the Postal Service doing in Nevada and other swing states to guarantee processing of election mail? Postmaster General.
Well, I kind of disagree with the premise that the Postal Service is going through a massive transformation to deal with the consequences of the 15 years before I got here and the changes in mail volume, and it's operate over $100 billion worth of losses. The changes that we would make in Reno, Nevada, had to do with transportation, network-wide transportation of outgoing mail. Since 2000, about 2000, we have 57.5 billion pieces of single-piece first-class mail. Last year, we had under 12 billion pieces. The system is in place for collection of mail and moving it back into our main processing centers is the same, which is part of the reason for the $100 billion worth of losses and the $20 billion worth of deferred maintenance that we have on our plants and the 30-year-old vehicles that my carriers drive. The intention of why that we looked at the reversal was when we looked at the overall operational requirements. We put 60 or so of these operations similar to Reno, Nevada, through a long process that identifies opportunities for us to reduce cost, to more logically sequence mail flow, and so on. We wanted to get ahead of the game in terms of the administrative processes. And since then, we've done further analytics, which led to our 3661 that we filed with the Postal Reform Act, with the Postal Regulatory Commission, to realign that strategy. That would, of the 60 that we filed, would put maybe approximately 30 of those centers back in local cancellation. It's strictly about local cancellation, which was going to be moved. Yes, Reno had the characteristics of the other 30 that we will be considering. Right? It was far. It was the size of the city, the amount of mail processed that turned around local, so on and so forth. Reno's local election mail would have been, in terms of how we foresaw it with the cancellations, would have been just fine also. This is another way to deal with a long-standing issue that we should have addressed long ago that's going to try and enable the Postal Service to survive for another 250 years. Because right now, as I see it, it will not, unless we do some dramatic changes to what we have.
Thank you, sir. Another question sort of related to that. Why does the Postal Service not have a standing policy of not making, this is from NPR's Hansi Lo Wang. Why does the Postal Service not have a standing policy of not making operational major changes during or close to the start of the mailing voting period for primary and general elections? For example, this year, the Atlanta Regional Processing and Distribution Center opened 17 days before Georgia's primary election day. And then there was the Local Transportation Optimization Initiative in Richmond, Virginia, starting 4 days before the Virginia primary day. Sir?
We are embarking on a major network change. The decisions that were made for Atlanta and Richmond and so on around the nation were made two years ago. making these transitions in February of the year, with our focus being more on the general election. Trying to get everything done before the general election was our primary goal. We had satisfactory performance in Atlanta, satisfactory performance on the election in Virginia. We deployed extraordinary measures in both of those situations because our service was was failing. But there are elections every year in different requirements, and this is the timing that it worked out for us. And we also need to get on with our business because soon we will be in a situation when I arrived here, about to run out of cash.
All right, let's move on to a question from Jory Heckman of Federal News Network. The National Association of State Election Directors and the National Association of Secretaries of State say they are still concerned about USPS performance ahead of Election Day, even after the PMG's most recent letter to both groups. What more can USPS do to address those concerns?
Well, I had a dialogue with them just yesterday. They sent their letter. I sent mine. I have agreed to stay more in contact with them. I have procedurally I procedurally directed our regional team to be more integrated in the meeting with our operational teams as we move forward, so we can more rapidly respond to issues as we get the specifics of those issues. Okay, we cannot deal in generalities, which is often what we get. So with regard to that it should help clear up any issues that we have in terms of communication. Now, having said that, I recognize that we have had some operational issues with regard to our transitions in certain areas, not in the whole country, which is again a generality, and we have doubled down in terms of new processes to improve our overall operation. We improved the process and flow of mail. We improved the process and flow of election mail. And with that, we have certain operations within our organization that are still done by hand. We need to put special attention on that, which we have. And it is my job to continue to communicate with them, which I will, and continue to drive the organization forward, which I will, to make sure that we clear up the generalities and explain the changes that we're making, investigate the issues that occur, resolve those in a timely manner, and build the confidence. And I am committed to doing that, as I believe they are too. So I think we will work better, more in touch as we move forward.
All right, thank you, sir. We have a follow-up from Alex at the New York Times that I think kind of leads well from that. What are the processes that election mail goes through that are distinct from regular mail? Is there a special scanning process for election mail that regular mail does not go through?
I'll let Adrian take that, but I would, theoretically it shouldn't, right? We have much more control on the tender of ballots, outgoing ballots to us from election mail officials. They kind of monitor that. Most areas monitor that right up to handing off, sitting on our dock when they give it to us and walking through the plant. So they make sure that it gets into the mail properly on the outgoing side. But again, coming back, these are tendered by individual in the various ways across various entry points that allow us to come through the mail system. And then at the end, we have the genetic makeup of the organization is that all 640,000 people are looking at ballots. If they see a stray one, they dive on it and get it into the system. I think that's a little unusual and exceptional. And then we have the as we get close, we have the extraordinary measures that we deploy to save ballots that mostly were tendered late, and occasion and also that we might have mishandled along the way. So I think it's the operations that we do around the total mail process. Remember, this is 0.11% of our mail volume buried in all the other mail once it gets into a machine and starts moving. So that, I think it's more on the physical observation, the physical tender of the outgoing ballots, and the extraordinary measures that we deploy in the end that really drive the the multiple point improvement over our service and the success that we have had over history with election mail. And Adrian, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yes, sir, I will.
Or correct me. You can correct me.
No, it's everything you said is absolutely true. We don't have distinctions between regular mail and election mail. The only thing that we do different, to Lewis's point, is that we deviate from that normal processing. So those scan events, of course, will not be captured during that extraordinary period of time, and which is the reason that it's such a short time frame, and that we don't deviate until we get closer to the general election. But all mail has the same scan events and travels and are processed the same way. But thanks for asking.
All right, moving on from there, we have John Hanna from the Associated Press. Lewis, you said some local election officials misunderstood the extraordinary handling of ballots mailed late. Would that handling account for a lack of a postmark on a ballot, which is something that officials have cited? Mr. Hanna is based in Kansas. So if you could speak to that, sir.
I'm trying to recollect what, when and what I said that to, but there is, maybe in my open remarks, there is a misunderstanding of the postmarks. And we do not, I mean, a general statement I will make is we do not postmark everything, right? And in conversations, one of the things that I noticed in conversations with some of our people out in the field and expressing their dedication, perhaps they say we try and postmark everything. If they see a ballot, we try and postmark everything. But postmarks have been designed to cancel out the remittance payment, the stamp, for lack of a better words. Well, we have a lot of mail that comes through businesses and so forth that go through different processes, in terms of what our handling process is. So I make the general statement: if you think everything is postmarked, that's inaccurate. Specifically. I don't know if Adrian wants or Steve wants to add anything to that, but that is what we find ourselves in those discussions often, and I can't be more specific to say that we don't postmark everything.
That is correct, and just to reiterate, the primary purpose, as Lewis stated, the primary purpose of the cancellation is to ensure that postage cannot be reused, and some categories of postage, such as prepaid. We have specific policies and instructions for our employees as we get closer to the general election for our employees to follow. We make every effort, as Lewis said, to postmark every piece. However, some circumstances prevent us from doing that. There are specific times when mail could enter into an originating site, bypass a cancellation for whatever reason, gets to a destinating site, and we do instruct our employees not to cancel those pieces because we cannot determine when we took custody of the mail and it compromises the integrity of the mail piece. So yes, again, it's our longstanding policy to try to make every effort to ensure that the ballots mailed by voters receive a postmark, regardless of how the postage is paid. But again, we also, our primary purpose is to ensure that the postage cannot be reused. But thanks for asking.
And if I could add to that, I mean, we have 31,000 retail centers, most of which are open during election. Where I mentioned earlier that we'll put special lines in. take the ballot into the retail center and ask to get it postmarked, and you will have a postmarked ballot. That's a guarantee.
Excellent. Thank you so much, both of you. We're going to move on with Stevens from KHOU in Houston. His question is USPS continuing its network modernization at this time as election mail is being processed, or are these plans now on hold?
So everything that has to do with mail processing and the specific flat mail processing and so forth will be is settling down and will be halted in the next couple of days. But we have facilities being built, being renovated. We have electric vehicle charging stations being put in places. So it's such a broad question for an operation of 31,000 facilities across the land, desperately in need of modernization and renovation. We're in the fourth year of a 10-year plan to do this, to halt everything. And we'll discuss specifically with some members of Congress and so forth what exactly we will continue to do and what we will not do. None of our activities will affect the election, the coming November elections. Operations changes that specifically involve mail processing, like we did in Atlanta and Virginia, but also Charlotte and Portland and other areas where we were successful, will not be occurring. These types of major things. But every day I'm out fixing dock doors and fixing potholes and tuning, taking up a mail machine and doing maintenance and so on and so forth. So the question, I've been in operations with large institutions a whole part of my life, and to try and explain that we're not going to do anything anywhere for any amount of time is kind of a hard thing to wrap my head around and answer. Right, specific to mail, the election mail and so forth, it will be dormant and it will not be impactful to anything that we have to do for to process mail during the next 40 days after next week.
All right, let's move on to a question from Gabe Cohen at CNN. As you may, I'm sure you're aware of this, sir. There was a tweet that went out, I believe over the weekend, from presidential candidate Donald Trump, and he made a claim that you and the Postal Service have admitted that you're experiencing record mail loss and delays and you're unprepared for the election, and that hundreds of thousands of ballots will be lost, possibly on purpose. Do you have a response to that?
Well, my response is like my response to everyone who says that we're not prepared for the election, is that they're wrong. And I don't know that I need to comment any more than that. They're wrong.
All right. And another question from Jory Heckman at Federal News Network. Aside from mail-in ballots, USPS also delivers a large, oh heavens, my questions bounced there for just a moment. A large amount of political mail from candidates ahead of the election. Is there anything particular the USPS is doing to prepare for the large volume of political mail?
We political mail, seasonality in types of volume that we see, both for the holiday season and so forth, is something we're quite prepared for. Again, as I said, political mail is a small portion of our business. It gets a little concentrated. But not to any any effect. You also have to remember, I have an infrastructure that is still kind of built for 2,000 mail volume. So it's a large, large infrastructure, and we're half the volume that we had in 2000. I will say that problems we see in that is lots of that political mail is entered from actually out of state, different states, because it's marketing mail. The quality of the paper sometimes gives us problems, doesn't get processed through our machines appropriately, and so forth. That's something after we get through this, we need to look into. But overall, it'll move smoothly.
Yeah, and if I could add something there, Louis, just we do have some longstanding processes in moving political mail. We have what we call our tag 57, which are special tags, so mailers can tag the volume so that we can identify that it's political mail. We have election mail and political mail logs in our offices, so we're able to ensure that we've identified the volume, we know it's there, and we're able to move it through and track the delivery of those pieces, that we're delivering those pieces as well.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks for stepping up, Steve. A couple of questions further from NPR reporter Hansi Lo Wang. What was the Postal Service's process for formally obtaining feedback from state and local election officials on its Delivering for America initiative? Sir?
So I will start with that. I am a pretty accessible executive, and with regard to any kind of major issues that people want to address, they can just call my office if they're in leadership of any association or so on, and I will speak to them. Having said that, I think I'll let Adrian and Steve explain to you the amount of interactions that we have. We measure it in terms of interactions, like 19,257 interactions year to date with election officials across the thing. But I will also say that when everyone, and we're involved with this a little too, and one of the things I want to enhance, when people speak in generalities in a transactional business, it's very hard to solve problems. Okay, so that's one of the things I'm committing to get my team to speak more specifically and ask more specific questions and so therefore we can get to quicker resolution. And I would ask that, everyone that has an issue, help us identify it. So with that, I will turn it over to Steve and Adrian to wow you with their knowledge of the amount of interaction that we have.
Yeah, thank you, Louis. And so we have ongoing outreach with our election officials. We have 50 managers of customer relations who serve as primary points of contact for election officials. We will continue that outreach throughout the year. Specific to DFA and our network modernization, we have briefed specific states who have been part of some of those network changes, and we've provided briefings to those states that have gone very well. But again, we will continue the relationship, the partnership with our election community, and the outreach will continue throughout this year and into next year.
Yeah, and I would add, just in when DFA was rolled out, the election officials were particularly NASA and NASED were groups that we briefed on the plan as we rolled it out, and then the ongoing discussions that Adrian talks about were working, and as Louis said, we need to get better, but we continue with the ongoing as the plans roll out, and then specifically when things are happening in local jurisdictions or states, we're able to brief them on that as we go forward.
And if I can get back to the question on Reno, because I want to make sure I'm clear on. I'm thinking through what the process was with the I had a lot of interaction with the Senate on this. The process for this 50-something sites that we have to go through is a long, process that is somewhere between law and standard ritual. There's a whole bunch of things that has to happen, and it goes on, for a while. We wanted to aggregate all this. The these locations as we were designing our network, and we had to go through that process. My intention was never to proceed. Those are multi-year strategies. My intention was never to proceed with that part of our transition until after the election. I had testified up in at Congress, to that with what we were doing, and I followed up with a letter that we were postponing. It came out as postponing any of those activities. We might have had one here, one there. I don't think Reno was one of them that we might have done before. But we were going to do any of those mail processing review decisions. We were not going to to execute on them until after the election. So that part was not the same decision as the decision that we made just recently there and in Tennessee and one in Texas and so forth. That decision is based on a different set of criteria that will be long-standing for as long as I'm here. Our direction is to do more things in Reno than less. So I just wanted to clarify that.
All right. And in fact, Hansi's second question would follow up with the discussion about input. Is the Postal Service still seeking to consider, is the Postal Service still continuing to consider seeking an advisory opinion from the Postal Regulatory Commission for its Delivering for America initiative before January 1st, 2025?
Yes, absolutely. We've already put the Postal Regulatory Commission and the public on notice. We already had a town hall, for lack of a better description, public hearing, where members of my team explained, not exactly, but in summary, what we intend to request and do. And I expect to have that filing in by probably by the end of this month, a full detailed request to get in by the end of this month. That'll take 90-day review, which will get us, past the election, past peak season, into 2025, and then we're off to, hopefully we're off to the races in terms of trying to save the Postal Service, because the trajectory we have right now is not pretty.
All right. Our New York Post reporter, Mark, is back with another question. Aren't ballots often sent as business reply mail and thus postage due? Aren't BRMs generally marked in some fashion to assure payment?
And Louis,
I'm going to toss that one.
May I take that one, Louis?
Please.
Okay. So thanks for the question. So again, the primary purpose of cancellation for us is to ensure that postage, like a stamp, for instance, cannot be reused. The categories of mail that could bypass that is the business reply mail is a perfect example of pre-canceled volume, meaning that volume has been paid for either by the election official or the mail owner. And so therefore it bypasses our cancellation machine. We're not required. We don't have a reason to cancel that piece. So that's a part of that, every piece under our normal operations. So those pieces would definitely bypass the cancellation machine.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, Postmaster General DeJoy, Adrienne Marshall, Steve Monteith, and of course, Inspector Donahue for talking about this. Again, we're going to have these briefings going forward on a regular basis, and I will send you all emails about them. If you have any follow-up questions regarding this election mail briefing or at any point leading up to the November general election, you can email me, Marty Johnson, at martha.s.johnson@usps.gov. We really appreciate you joining us today. Again, thanks for your patience, and we look forward to your efforts in helping us get our work out there. Have a great day.